There are times when a person will ask me a question for a psak.
What's psak?
Halachic decision. And my answer would be very straightforward. Here's the psak. This is kosher, this is not, this is it. There are other times where a person will ask me a question and I'll sit there and be reluctant to give a definite answer. But I'll sit there and say there are different viewpoints on it. I think, like, one example that Alice pointed out was the question of going up in Har Bayis. Okay, so there's different opinions about whether you're allowed to go up in Har Bayis or not, on the Temple Mount. And there are people now who advocate for going up on the Temple Mount. When I was going to yeshiva, the general attitude was you don't go up on the Temple Mount. Okay? It was generally, and that's generally the way Orthodoxy conducted itself for many years. The Temple Mount was a place you don't go because there was issues of being tameh, of being ritually impure and so forth. But now people are arguing you go up there and so forth and so forth.
Could it be an issue of just stam lahachas?
That they want to go up there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's different motivations for why people will do it. No doubt about that. But the fact is, and you see, you're leading to the question of how people decide between variant opinions. So there's certain situations. It ties a little bit into what I'm getting at, in the sense that a person asks me about whether they can go up on the Temple Mount. I wouldn't go up on the Temple Mount. When I was in Israel, I did not go up on the Temple Mount. I'm not going to go up on the Temple Mount. Someone asked me a question. I sit there and say a different thing. Someone asked me point blank, should I go on the Temple Mount? I would be reluctant to give a definite decision. There's other halachic opinions where I pretty well do give definite opinions, knowing full well that there's a disagreement, right? That there's disagreements and there's this opinion and that opinion, but I would sit there and say, this is my psak. Okay? And generally, if a person asks me a question like that, it's usually a person, when I do know there's differing opinions, when I basically say this is what I think is right, it usually applies to I usually will talk that way to someone who is either it's immediate answer, they're about to eat something, can I eat it or not? So yes, you can eat it or not. But a lot of times it has something to do with whether they have a connection with me. In other words, if some guy just calls me on the phone and asks me a question, I'll do that. And by the way, this has happened to me because I have a view on women's hair covering, for example. My view on women's hair covering is that a woman in her house does not have to cover her hair. Okay? Now, the truth is that I came to that decision, or I know there's different opinions and so forth and so forth, so the opinion that says that a woman does not have to cover her hair in her house, regardless of who's over. I'm not, if you ever come over to my house, you'll see that my wife will not have her hair covered, okay, in the house. But then when she's out in the street, you'll always see her wearing a hat. Okay, so the fact is that's a classical opinion. Okay.
So you're saying regardless of who comes by,
in the house,
Oh wait,
right.
Let me tell my wife.
Right. The fact is that yeah, I mean the fact is that there are a lot of people where women won't cover their hair in their house if no one's over. That a lot of people will do. But the fact is that once someone's there, then they will. Then a lot of women will cover their hair. But there's another shita that says that in a house a woman doesn't have to cover her hair. Okay. Now the truth is I had a Rosh Hashiva who had that opinion. Okay. I knew other Rabbanim who had that opinion. The fact is that the person I think really did the most, one of the people who did most of a tremendous amount of investigation of the topic, a person by the name of Rabbi Dr. Dov Frimmer, who wrote his PhD thesis in Mishpat Ivri on the topic of Das Yehudis, which includes this issue. he actually, I think his wife actually followed that shita. He actually is even more makel. But the fact is that there's a lot of people who have this opinion, and other Rabbanim have this opinion. And the fact is that was the opinion that I understood the best. Okay. Now, the fact is that there are a few people in the world who follow that shita because that was my psak. Okay? They do it because I do it, or my wife does it. Okay? But they are people who basically ask me every shiloh that they have. And they also know that in certain situations I'm also more machmir than a lot of shitas. My kids will tell you that they sometimes don't like asking me questions because I'm a lot more stringent than other rabbis they know. But the fact of the matter is, yeah.
Do you do that what you do because it makes sense more?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to get to. The fact is that that's my position. Okay, so the point is that it has developed that some people heard this and they tried asking me a question like this and so forth, and I eventually got to a point. I says I'm not going to give I'm not going to give one of my more lenient viewpoints to someone who has no other connection to me. I remember I once had a phone call from someone out of the blue. It seems that a woman who was really a student of mine, involved in mine, and so forth and so forth, she had a question about birth control. She was newly married, a question of birth control, and I told her that she could wait. She can use birth control right now. All of a sudden I get a call from someone who knew this woman, right, from somewhere in the States, and says, can I, have a shiloh, blah, 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 can I do this and this and this? I said, who are you? Like, what are you asking me for? Oh, I got your name, so I'm telling you to answer this question, so forth and so forth. I said, well, who are you? Where are you? Do you have a rabbi? Yeah, of course I have a rabbi. Yeah, I live in a Jew, in a frum community, and so forth and so forth. I'm heavily involved in this frum community, right, so forth and so forth. So I said, so why don't you ask that rabbi? Because you would never say it's okay. So you're just calling me because I say it's okay? I mean, okay, well, what about all my other viewpoints? Turns out that the guy was in a community, that many things that would be followed in that community I would not be happy with. Different opinions in Judaism. Okay, and all of a sudden I said, listen, you can't do that. There's a consistency issue here. If you want to stop abiding by that community, then we can start being a student of mine. Okay. Anyways, so you're getting into situations here. The fact is that every individual makes decisions. Even if you're not going to make the decision about Jewish law, you're going to make the decision about who you're going to ask about the Jewish law. Right? You're going to make the decision of which rabbi you're going to ask. Okay? That already is a decision. So the fact is you make a decision. Now what you're asking is how does a person make a decision? That's your first question. How do you decide what rabbi you're comfortable with in making a decision? Right? So the truth is how do you make that decision? Okay? So the thing is that said beforehand about my own thoughts and so forth and so forth. So how do you make that decision? What is the reason why you decide you want to ask this rabbi and not that rabbi? Why do you want to make the decision that I want to go to this rabbi's class and not that rabbi's class? Right? Is it because this guy knows more? Well, how do you know what you give a bechina to every rabbi, a test to every rabbi to see the one who knows more or knows less? So how do you make your decision amongst right off the bat of what rabbi you're going to? Right? Okay?
What did I miss?
What? I don't know. I was trying to figure that out myself. Okay.
Soap opera just happened.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to make room for one more person.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So the fact is that's ultimately the first question you're asking. Now, the truth is how do you make that decision? What is it that you make? Now, is it because this rabbi is more lenient? Well, that might be part of it. You might sit there and say, I want more leniency. There are people who like to make decisions. They like going to that rabbi because he's more stringent. I knew someone who he really wanted stringent rabbis because there's that's something he wanted. But the fact is that the question emerges is how do you make those decisions? Well, the first thing you have to recognize is that you are a decision maker. And now the question emerges is as you make decisions, you get information. And that information is twofold. It's information about the decision maker, and it's information about the material that the decision is being made with. And then, as you study, you begin to figure out how you relate to the material, as well as how you relate to the decision maker who's making the decision based on the material. So what occurs is that you see a rabbi making decisions, and then you start learning the material. Now, a lot of times what happens in certain educational systems is that they're very, very programmed to only give you the material that will never lead you to challenge the rabbi making the decision. Right? So the fact is that you are, a lot of times what happens is you're given very directed material so that the material always supports what the teacher wants you to conclude. But as you open more sforim and as you learn more, you begin to find that there's a lot more material, and what you begin to understand is that the material is full of what would seem to be contradictions and challenges and the need to work out a way to try and reconcile. Yeah.
The question then that I want to ask is, so you look at the material and you investigate it and you find it, but when you say that there's a hierarchy in the learning system,
yeah,
of who the top Talmidei Chachamim are in the world, then based on that, and then people then say because of their knowledge basis over someone who is
the fact
then they're overriding.
is when you start getting into the definitions of who are the top Talmidei Chachamim in the world, usually I would sit there and say, listen, it's pretty strong arguments why people are knowledgeable, but usually when people make those kind of decisions, you have to wonder who's making that decision. When you hear people talk about Gedolim, what does it mean to be a Gadol? Well, in my world, which is previous generations, the reason Ramosha was a Gadol is because everyone I ever ran into who I respected basically referred to Ramosha as a Gadol. Okay? The further reason why I understood Ramosha to be a Gadol is because when I started learning, he blew me away. Okay? It wasn't just the fact that he threw material at you. It's the fact of how he understood the material and how he would take things and sit there and say, you know, there's a famous story of the Dubna Maggid. And I'm using this just as an example to show genius. It's a famous story of the Dubna Maggid, who used to go around all these places in Lithuania, giving shmuzim every on Shabbos. So and when the Dubna Maggid came to town, it was a big thing in the town. It was like the rock star coming to town. You know, he was there. So he came to one city, and And they said to, and he came there, it's over, and some guy runs by and says, "Oh, visitor, you made a great Shabbos to come to this city. You know who's here? The Duna Magid. We're going to have a great Shabbos." He's looking and said, like, the Duna Magid is like shocked. This guy's being told that he's here, like it seems some other guy was impersonating himself to be the Duna Magid. They didn't have movies, they didn't have TV, they didn't have paper, pictures and paper. So some guy was going around saying, "I'm the Duna Magid." Now, so the Duna Magid says, "What's going on?" Okay, so he sees this other guy's being told he's the Duna Magid. So Duna Magid says, "You know something? Maybe I'll have a week off. Let's hear what this guy is saying." And as long as he says over it, seems what this guy did is he memorized the Duna Magid stuff perfectly. And he would say it over. So he said, "This is great. My lessons are getting out there, and I don't have to do the work. I can actually rest this Shabbos. So I don't need the covet. It's great." So he was sitting there. It was great. He was sitting there. He was very, and then people were very nice to him. So sitting there as a guest, he enjoyed it. Oh, very good. Oh, yeah, there's tremendous word. Okay. What happens though?
They meet each
The
other.
guy, no, the man was very nice. What happens though? The guy gets up there at Mincha and totally messes up. Gives over a word that the Duna Magid is furious with. So he goes to him and says, "Excuse me, sir, whenever you got what I said right, I kept quiet. Because I didn't really care. I didn't need the covenant. Right? You're doing it right. You got across my message. That was what was really important. But this word, you're totally wrong, and the message you're delivering is wrong. So I got to say something. You aren't the Duna Magid, I am. And you're wrong." So the city is totally like, the people who do, like, what's going on over here, right? So how do we say it? So the Duna Magid says, "I'll tell you what we'll do. Open a Chumash, okay? Pick one page here, one page there. Take the top pasuk on this page, and take the bottom pasuk on that page. And whoever can put together a mashal, a parable, that unites those two psukim, that person will be the Duna Magid." Right? Because that's what the Duna Magid did. That's what his greatness was. Right? So people say, "Well, that's the test." Okay. So they do this. So they randomly open up the Chumash in 2 pages. One here, one there. First pasuk on this page, first verse on this page, last verse on that page. 2 verses that seem to have nothing to do with each other. And they say, "Okay, weave a story that combines the two of them, and a message combines the two of them." So the thinker goes first. He goes first. And he's sitting there saying, "It's a ridiculous test, blah, blah, I'm the Duna Magid, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to do that. No, I can't do it." So, okay. And the Duna Magid is just sitting there quietly. "Okay. You finished with your excuses? Good. That's my turn. Give me a second." And then the Duna Magid gives over a remarkable shir, combining the 2 verses into a remarkable message. So like he says, "Okay, now I'm the real Duna Magid, and I'm telling you what the guy was saying before is wrong, and this is the real message I tried to convey." So some guy goes over to the Duna Magid and said, "You Balgaiva, what a haughty thing to do, right? Well, whoever could do this, blah, 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 I'm the Duna Magid." So the Duna Magid answered with another mashal. He basically said, "Listen, if other people are saying who you are, and are presenting you correctly, then you keep your mouth shut. Right. But if there's no one else who can present the truth, even about you, then you have to present the truth, even if it looks a little bit haughty." The point is, why did I tell you that story is that that's what tells you what genius is. So when I was in yeshiva, I kept hearing from Moshe Weinstein. He was a gadol. Every one of my rebbeim said he was a gadol. Okay, it was a sample, because my yeshiva was a certain type of yeshiva. But then I'd go out beyond that to others yeshivas, and everyone agreed Moshe was a gadol.
Aren't there rabbanim nowadays that people also consider universal?
Well, that's okay. So let me go on. Let me go on with this. So the fact is that this name comes across. You begin to understand the name, and so forth and so forth. What happens is that then you start learning and you start seeing for yourself. That's what I mean by the information. Rav Moshe blew me away in his learning. So to me, Rav Moshe was a remarkable figure. Okay? So I had my own experience from learning his stuff, my own experience from what people told me, and so forth and so forth. That's how I then developed a certain understanding of Rav Moshe was to me. To me. Okay. Now, did this happen with other people? Yes. It does happen with other people. Okay? Were there other people who were as universally accepted as Rav Moshe? No. So there's certain people who I learned to accept as a gadol, for whatever reason, a lot having to do with the fact that I developed a certain connection to the learning. And there are other people who were perceived to be gedolim, and when I speak about them, I speak about them with respect, but they don't have the same connection to me in my learning. Okay? Their voice doesn't have the same voice as other people. Okay? Now, the fact is when you hear people in the world today, the fact is that are these people all scholars? Yes. The truth is, in this world today, you have to understand that there are different segments of the Jewish world, and in those different segments of the Jewish world, certain people are considered more significant than other people. Okay? And a lot has to do with your own personal connection to them. Okay? There's someone in particular who, for example, is perceived to be a Gadol B'Yisrael. Okay? Some people consider it to be the greatest Gadol B'Yisrael. I never really got connected to his material. He just never really blew me away like Rav Moshe. Okay, so the fact is that I always speak about this person with respect, but the fact is that there's a certain connection you have with people. The point is that what happens is that there's no objective standard of who is a gadol. There's no test that says here's a gadol. Every person you hear who is a gadol, it means that the community accepts this person based upon scholarship, and that scholarship. I can think of a person, for example, I had a shiloh once when I was in Eretz Yisrael, and me and a friend of mine had this shiloh, and we felt we couldn't deal with it, so we went to see Rosh Zalman. Okay? Rosh Zalman Orbach, right? The Hanhaga of Rosh Zalman blew me away. Just blew me away. The way he related to us, the way and it was there to Yisrael, right? We knocked on his door, and me and a friend, and said, "Excuse me, put a Rav in, and just have someone has asked us some shilas, and there's a shilah, and we have to ask him about it, and so forth and so forth." He said, "Sure, come in." He greeted us, unbelievable, so forth and so forth. We asked the Shaila. His response was very, very perceptive. Like, was really perceptive.
He answered in Hebrew?
Yeah. He does speak English. We have to speak in Hebrew, right? And his sensitivity to certain issues was unbelievable. And there was a sexual side to the Shaila, and he was very sensitive the way he conducted himself, the way he asked the question, and so forth and so forth. And he just blew me away. So the truth is that for me, when I hear something b'shem Rosh Zalman, I take it seriously, because I had a personal experience with him. And the fact is that the world speaks about him with great offers of learning, and also from the learning of what I had of his stuff. The point is that you develop your own things. But the point is people throw out these ideas. But you're asking questions as if there's some kind of objective standard. This person is sort of like has this, some objective standard. And the fact is, his community has accepted him.
But isn't there also an idea that there, even in the like you said, like what made Rav Moshe is that you go to different communities and they accepted him. So with certain gedolim or certain perceived gedolim, them saying
within certain communities.
But even outside of those communities, they still perceive it.
Yeah, and the fact is that certain communities, they're more accepting of scholars outside their community, and there's other communities that are less accepting of scholars in the community.
So the question is...
So the point is one of the problems that exists in the world is the fact that if you go into certain communities, they're only going to call certain individuals Gedolim.
But that's because they claim that their status of learning is...
How do they know the other person's status in learning?
Because they claim that those people are at the top. No.
How do they know? The fact that,
make a claim that the Dati Leumi, there's no Dati Leumi.
How do you know? Did anyone give them? How do they know between Ravar and Lichtenstein? And did you ever sit there and talk with them in learning?
Did anyone?
Yeah, the point is that you know you know what's interesting? No one ever mentions this. But who was the one man that everyone in Yerushalayim thought really was the biggest Talmid Chacham in 1930 in Yerushalayim? No one ever mentions this. Who did everyone think on objective standards of the biggest Talmid Chacham in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim in 1930?
Chazon Ish.
No, it was not the Chazon Ish in 1930. I think he still was in Eretz Yisrael then, but who was still alive in 1930? The Raya Cook. Everyone was mighty that in terms of lumdus, the Raya Cook was the man.
But not at the time.
Yeah, at the time. Everyone. If you really now, history, you know, is always in the hands of the people who write history, and so forth and so forth. I mean, there's a story. I read a biography of the Satmar Rav. Okay, so the Satmar Rav went to Eretz Yisrael. The Satmar Rav is much younger than the Raya Cook, but he was already known as an Elu and so forth and so forth. So the Satmar Rav, he came, and the Haredi, the Turi Karta community in Yerushalayim was bugging the Satmar Rav. You go and talk to that Rav Cook and show him why he's wrong. Prove to him why he's wrong. Satmar Rav didn't respond. Everyone says, no, you go and you prove him that he's wrong. And the Satmar Rav didn't respond. Okay, and then finally they were on him so much. Here, go prove Rav Cook why he's wrong. So finally, Satmar Rav was so angry. He says, "You guys don't get it. I go speak to Rav Cook. He's going to show me why I'm wrong." Right? I mean, like everyone. When I say everyone. Who am I to know whether Rav Cook or Rav Sanifel was bigger? I don't know. How am I to know? Right? They're both Gedolei Yisrael. And the Brisker Rav was there. I mean, the fact of the matter is, what do I know? But the point is that everyone talks to this person's a Gadol, that person's a Gadol. There's no one in the Dati Leumi community who's a Gadol. How do you know? Listen, you know, everyone...
I think it's a difference between the stories that people hear about a person and then what they learn, what they're
and also,
giving over.
And also because it's so important to build up this standard. In other words, what happens in one community is that they want you to abide by these authority figures. Therefore, they're defining authority figures in very absolute terms. In the more non-Orthodox community, when you talk in terms of authority figures, it's much more in terms of respecting their knowledge and understanding, but with a sort of allowance for your own ability to think. I mean, in our world today, have you ever heard the name of Rabbi Daniel Sperber?
Yes.
Okay.
From you.
Yeah, from me. You know who Daniel Sperber is? Okay, so he's the one who basically, the partnership minions with women having aliyahs and I'm not trying to any way say, you know. Okay, what?
He's an Orthodox rabbi?
Yes, he's an Orthodox rabbi. See, even your question, he's an Orthodox rabbi. It's like, even that question, he's an Orthodox, he gives women, he's an Orthodox rabbi. See, the fact is, do you even know this? Daniel Sperber, you speak to people, they sit there and say, we follow this psak because he's a gadol. Daniel Sperber is the head of Talmud at Bar Ilan University. Okay, he's written a book on Manhigim, on the Manhigim of Israel. It's noted as a classic. So it's like, so if you speak to people who follow the partnership minyanim, and I'm not trying to advocate for partnership minyanim. I personally am not a fan of partnership minyanim. But the fact is that when a person sits there and says, I go to partnership minyanim because that's Psaka with Daniel Sperber, who am I to argue?
What does it imply by that? By that term you just said?
What?
We just mentioned that term. But, no, before. Separate minyan.
The partnership minyan?
Yes.
The partnership minyan is a certain thing. It was a classic place where sort of was founded was a synagogue in Yerushalayim called Shira Chadasha. They create there are certain in Toronto. There's certain places they do it. There's a small place they do it here. Most of Orthodoxy is not a fan of partnership minyanim. Partnership minyanim is a term for minyanim that believe they are doing as much, they're letting women do as much as women can do. So, for example, women will lead Kabbalat Torah. They won't lead Marv because they can't lead Marv. They have Mechitza. Women have to daven behind the Mechitza. But a woman could lead Kabbalat Torah. Okay, a woman could lead it's not a Kabbalah Shabbos. Kabbalah Shabbos. A woman can get aliyahs. Okay, in other words, a woman. I think they say a woman can lead Pesukei Zimra, but of course they can't do Baruch because Baruch Hu's Deborah Minyan, his Deborah Kedusha needs a minyan. So they're saying we're pushing the envelope to let women do as much as they can do within their understanding of halacha. So now, most Orthodox Rabbanim, okay, and most Orthodox
it's a little weird or not?
Yeah, I mean the fact is that most of the people disagree with them, and most Orthodox rabbis disagree with this and feel that
where most. So like, where do you get most to like some like who decides? Like,
I mean generally, if you look around here and you ask most Orthodox rabbis in town in Toronto, you'll find that they'll sit there and say, no, we don't let women do that.
So who said Daniel Sperber is like a gadol like Israel?
What?
Who said he's a gadol?
So the point is, there are people who say that's the point. There are people who say when they follow him, they say, "Why, he's a gadol Israel? We're following him."
Rabbi Burke was probably gadol Israel.
So the point is, and who says he isn't? The fact of the matter is that you're making the decision he isn't. How do you know? The point. By the way, people in the Kabbalah Center say that.
Right.
Okay. The point is that what's your basis for not saying it? That's why when you get into decision making, the first thing you're saying is you're walking around saying who's saying it. The truth of the matter is that so you're going with your Rebbeim.
Right.
Now, if your Rebbeim are within a certain world, they only know about certain people. The fact of the matter is, are they open to the breadth of possibilities of who's there? When I was growing up, I couldn't believe the way certain people talked to Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik, and they were brought up in the yeshiva world, and Rabbi Yoshe wasn't perceived to be a gadol. Now in our world today, it's like who wouldn't have held Rabbi Yoshe as being a gadol? But the point is,
in the yeshiva community.
When nowadays it's pretty hard to. I mean, you could find some people maybe, but the fact
that you're going to say that.
Yeah, but the fact is that.
Why does it matter so much that you have to know who's gadol?
Okay, so the point is what you're really dealing with is. You see, you're asking a really good question. I don't really need to know I don't need to know the ultimate decision of whether a person's status in being a gadol or something like that. The question is how does this affect my decision-making process? And I'm talking in terms of me as an individual making decisions within Jewish thought. The starting point in making that decision is who you study from, who you take seriously. Okay, now, when you're a kid and you're sent to school, you immediately go to that school. Okay? And a lot of times the school is very protective of its interests. So there's certain schools you're going to go to that says, this is the truth, everyone else is a guy. You know what I mean? Okay? I mean, excuse my language. Right, so that's very narrow, okay? There's certain schools that are more open, but they have other ways. Most schools, in certain ways, present viewpoints that and they want you to abide by those viewpoints, right? So you're not going to go to, if you're going to a B'nai Akiva school, right? Divrei Yoel is not going to be your main textbook. You're not going to learn the writings of the Summer Rav, right? If you go to Summer, you won't be able to find a book from Rav Kook. So the easiest way of looking at these things is that this is right and this is wrong. Okay? Now, the point is if you stay within that world, then, and it's defined that way and so forth, then as you get further along and so forth, two things happen. First thing that happens is you encounter the material itself. The greatest indication of the depth of Torah material is how deep and complicated and demanding analysis that it is. That's why, to be very honest with you, I actually have an article written about this. It might be on the website. I have an article about one of the problems of women in the study of Torah is that women can become more dogmatic because women aren't presented with Gemara, with a lot of material that presents different viewpoints. So the fact is I found in my life that I'm pretty much of a broad thinker, but I find that when I would speak to, and the truth is I speak across the board, but I would find that once you sort of break a certain amount of you sort of create a certain camaraderie, and you break down any fears between people. I would talk across the board with people across the spectrum, because in the end, there's a certain point where you're just interested in learning, just interested in the material. Right. So the fact that I would raise questions that that normally wouldn't be heard in the yeshiva, but they saw that they were legitimate questions, and I say, and this person actually asked that question. Basically, you get into it. So I find that a lot of times with men, even if they were in very right-wing yeshivas, but when they got into it, they said, "Hey, listen, we're really here to learn." Right. With women, though, there was always sort of like a hesitation. Now, it might be the fact that there's normal hesitation between men and women in certain communities or whatever, but a lot of time, women expressed to my wife that I was like tearing down their structure. I was challenging because they were given very dogmatic understandings of Judaism, so forth and so forth. So the fact is.
So why do women like hold strong or like? Because so much more like.
Right, because they don't
break away from.
Right, they don't have the knowledge base. They don't have the knowledge base to see the spectrum of opinions. Now, just because you see the spectrum of opinions doesn't mean that you're not going to be in one camp. There are a lot of people who are very, very adamant about being in one camp. There are people who are very adamant about being in one camp. They just know a lot of material, and in that they've made the decision to be within this one camp.
So how do you define a camp? How do you know your camp is right? And
that's the point. Is even with the term right.
What's
the first thing. What?
No.
The first thing you have to understand is that what we're looking for is not objective right. Okay, that this is the truth. What you're looking for is the understanding as you understand it to the best of your ability of what you think God is trying to say to you, or what you think God is trying to get across to you.
That's a problem.
No, the fact is you have to understand that everyone's Torah is personal. You're not out there saying this is the objective statement of God. No, the most you can figure out is this is what I think God is saying. Now,
within the Torah spectrum.
Within the Torah spectrum right now.
If you
that's what we're talking.
It's like, I think God just wants me a good person.
No. I'm talking from knowledge. In other words, when you begin to understand these things, and you see Machlokas and Rashi and Tosfos, right? And you see disagreements. Both the people believe this is what God said. They both are saying that this is what they believe God is saying, or God directed. They believe this is the conclusion that is correct. But they also understand that it is their decision of what they think God is saying. And therefore they can have respect for each other. Because the fact is that it comes to my starting point. So the first thing you have to understand is the challenge of you being a decision maker. And it starts with who you're learning from. It starts with your choice of rabbi. Your first choice of teacher is from your parents, whatever it is. But then you start seeing the material. And then it gets to a point where you have to make your own decision of who you're learning from, who you're studying from. Okay? And you want to find someone that can connect to you.
So machlokas isn't really a thing if it's just your I guess your
machlokas is a thing. It's a disagreement about what.
But it's not binding unless it's your derech.
Wait a sec.
If his derech is to do something different, and my derech is than mine.
It's not so subjective. You see, that's the problem. It's a mixture of object and subjective. It's not like this is my opinion, that's your opinion. It's like I like baseball, you like basketball.
I have 3 hours, you have 6 hours, he has 1 hour.
No, it's the fact is that I believe this is the halacha, okay, based upon my analysis and my conclusions of the psak that I'm dealing with, okay.
My father was.
Okay. No. The fact of the matter is that if you're following the psak of so and so and so forth, then you sit there and say, I followed this psak.
So you can change your Masorah?
That's a different question. It's not the question of Masorah.
Seems like it's like you could be in the same learning system as like another person.
Yeah.
Because your personalities are different, you'll receive it differently.
Okay.
You'll learn like out the weight of practicing that way of Judaism. Differently.
And not only that, it's like many great Rabbanim, when the greatness of their Talmidim is their Talmidim were all different.
There's also another case. I had a Rav who used to say that, he mentioned this a lot. He said that he had people who he considered his Talmidim, and they would ask shilas to him, and it was only until he gave them the answers they didn't want to hear that they left. So you're binding to your Rav, but then at what point do you say that I don't want this Rav?
So the fact is that what you're perhaps pointing to is the fact that if they got answers that they didn't like, why is it they didn't like it?
Right.
They didn't like it because they didn't like the actual conclusion, or they didn't like it because they felt that they saw weaknesses in their analysis in the analysis and so forth, and they felt that there's in other words, you're focusing. You see, what you do is you're focusing on what makes them leave, what makes them say. The starting point though is what makes you connected. Okay, in other words, if you happen to show up by this rabbi, and your parents sent this to the rabbi, and the rabbi says this to you, and then you get to a point where you're bothered by where you've studied some material and you're wondering how this person can reconcile his viewpoint with this material, and you go up to him and ask him this question. He says, "We don't ask those questions. Don't ask like that." And then he finds out there's someone else who has a better what he thinks has a better understanding of that material, and then leaves, that's a very different process. I mean, the point is that what you're looking at is, why does this guy leave? Well, sorry. Some people do leave, or some people do determine their halachas based upon the conclusion, right? There are people who say, I want this opinion, and I found a rabbi who wants to give me that opinion, so that's going to be my rabbi. The fact is that how legitimate is that process? What I'm trying to describe is the starting point. You're in a school. You have Rabbanim. The Rabbanim are there to teach you Torah.
Right.
Okay? There's two aspects to what that person is teaching you. One is the material itself, and the other is the authority in the decision making based upon this material. Now, let me try and use Catholicism as an example. What did Catholics do?
They meditate.
No, what did Catholics do with the Bible? They kept the Bible basically in Latin. Why?
So nobody can understand it.
So what does that do?
And so it keeps people sort of in the dark, and they don't have to ask any questions if they don't know.
Okay, so the fact of the matter is, if you want to have a very strong authoritative system, right? Okay, then basically you either state that the authority is not based upon knowledge, it's based upon some kind of mystical perspective, which is what you see in many religions. It's not based upon this person's knowledge, it's based upon this person has some kind of connection to God or whatever. So therefore that's why I follow him. The point is that religion has an authority aspect to it where a person is saying, this is what God wants you to do.
Right.
Okay. Now, the point is, though, if you sit there and say God gives you direction what you should do from this material here, right? And if you study this material to figure out what God wants you to do, right? Well, if I give you that direction, then I'm going to sit there and take away from the concept of authority. Because now I'm saying, hey, it's like, let's say going to a doctor. Go to a doctor, right? Well, you can sit there and say, listen, I've studied medicine, I studied all the biology and so forth and so forth, right? So what are you going to the doctor for? Make your own decision. If you know all the knowledge. Okay, so you walk into the doctor, you even think that you know more than the doctor knows. So what are you doing at the doctor? You're making a decision based upon the knowledge. Good. Okay? Now, if you don't have that knowledge, then you sit there and say, listen, I have to make the decision based upon what the doctor tells me because I don't have the knowledge. So the easiest way to maintain people following authority is by not teaching them knowledge. That was what Catholicism did. Only priests learned Latin and the information. The average person basically didn't have that information. How did you find out what to do? You had to go ask the authority figure. Okay? And we didn't want to have a challenge between these people who are based upon knowledge. Okay? If you sit there and say, gee, this knowledge is important and this is the basis of your decision, then that by definition is eventually going to challenge aspects of authority. So the truth is that the way usually you maintain authority is by not giving over the knowledge base for people to make their own decisions. If you want to have people, if you give over that knowledge base, by definition, you're going to start having issues about the authority because people with knowledge will sit there and say, wait a second, I don't get where you're coming from. I have a question. Or, well, I read the same material as you, and I get a completely different answer. Right? Now, the point is, in Judaism, we do both. Right? In Judaism, we teach you the material, we teach you the Gemaras, we teach you Shulchan, we teach you all this material. Okay? And then, you have institutions basically saying, don't make a decision, follow the authority. And the fact is that it really creates some kind of dichotomy. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that, and then the way you see it doing is because they're sitting there saying, well, these authority figures really know their material, and,
right.
and okay, so therefore I understand I don't know as much as that guy, so therefore he's going to be my authority figure. But then you find out that there's some other guy who's coming to different decisions who might be an equal authority figure, then what you're going to say, no, he's not an equal authority figure. Only this guy's a gadol, that guy's not a gadol. Based on what? Because
we
the
know, we just know.
Right. So the point is that's where you get into issues. The fact is I don't know anything. I understand the weaknesses of my own knowledge base. So therefore, I will turn to others to ask questions. Okay. I also know where I think I have some kind of knowledge to be able to make questions.
But then, how do you know that the person you're holding on that you see has a different opinion because of standing?
Oh, so therefore, this is all part of the decision making. The fact of the matter is that and part of that decision making has to come with your starting point. That yes, you are making the decision based upon some aspect of what you know or don't know. Okay? And part of that is Haga. Okay? I told you, Rav Shlomo Zalman, when I got blown away by Rav Shlomo Zalman, it was the way he carried himself. It wasn't that I didn't give him a fair in anything.
Yeah.
To me, that was a representative of those little time I spent with him. This is something which I would see in respect of a person who did have a status of a gadol. Now the reason I went to ask him is because people said, "Listen, you got a good shiloh there. You should go to a gadol." So who's the gadol in Yerushalayim? Who's the posting in Yerushalayim at that time? Rav Shlomo Zalman. So the point is that okay, fine. So the fact is that you obviously use information base and other things like that. But the thing you have to start, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, because what you have to deal with is that starting point.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that you are a decision maker.
Right.
You're choosing who you are studying with.
Right.
Okay, you're choosing who you're going to accept as a Rav. And not only that, in the study of Torah, you aren't just authority, you're not just relying upon authority. Somehow you're also supposed to study this material.
For yourself, right?
Right? And in studying that material, you already become someone that's it's really an interesting situation. That's why I was saying before, and with women. Women are not told that they have to study this material, therefore the authority situation can be much more adamant. So you're saying women become much more adamant. Yeah, because all they have is the authority figure. But the fact is at the same point in time, you have a lot of different things which are not so great. You have people basically trusting their own perspective. You know, a lot of people who, and this is usually what you find as a challenge in the more modern Orthodox world, is that people basically are going with a certain gut feeling. Right? Obviously this is good. Well, I'm not sure. Is it? You know what I mean? I mean, that's part of the issue, obviously. And that gets into the whole issue of the role of our own ethical perceptions in this analysis. Because we all have our own ethical perceptions. Right, of what we think is right and wrong.
So, if you have some very some very strong ethical questions, and you have not received, and none of the information you've received is sufficient from the different sources, does that mean you shouldn't rely on it? Like, you should keep on looking?
Yeah, you should keep learning.
And once you've gone through all of them, you still haven't found your answer.
You haven't gone through everything? You're a good be a show.
What you're saying is trust your instinct.
No, I'm not. I'm saying the fact is, I'm saying do your research.
And
but the fact,
trust your instinct.
But and it's a different type of learning.
Don't just accept.
You're right, but it's also a different type of learning.
Within the system, though.
But it's a different type of learning.
Right.
See, you're right. The fact of the matter is that you have to understand you are a decision maker, even on the most simple level of saying, who's the authority figure I'm going to pick from?
Right.
Because how am I choosing them? Okay? There is no doubt from a halachic perspective, there's authority or there's knowledge. It's not just your gut feeling. If you want just a gut feeling, that's Reform Judaism.
Right.
Reform Judaism's basic perspective was autonomy and the right of every individual to make their own decision, which was basically just a reflection of trust your instinct by itself of what you think is right or wrong. Once you enter into the world of orthodoxy, you're basically saying that there's this body of knowledge that has to be that is presenting what is correct. But this body of knowledge is also demands the role of the decision maker in the autonomous individual who's listening to this body of knowledge.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We'll take more on this next time.